Hey, how's it going, guys? We're back with another episode of Rise of Nations, the American campaign for Tulsi Gabbard, I think, Mommy 2020. We're about to attack the Aztecs, and I didn't prepare a script. I just came off doing another project. I decided, hey, I'm wired. Let's do a YouTube video. So I didn't come in with anything prepared. I'm just gonna talk off the cuff if I can. Getting all our units prepared to attack the Aztecs and also to defensively position ourselves on the east coast and west coast so that we don't get attacked from Asia or from the British. So that's kind of what I'm planning to do right now. We have our skill bonuses and our Oath of Fealty, but I'm not sure if we're going to use them. I think the Lakota Oath of Fealty would be actually really useful for this campaign. Just because you could build structures away from your national boundaries in neutral territory, which is actually really good for rushing. But the Aztecs are a rush nation, so I don't think that's the most viable strategy. I think it's better to play kind of like a defensive game. And when you get the opportunity to attack, go on the offensive. I think it's better in general in these older ages, like these younger periods, to build up economically, play defensive, and then go on the offense later. So we're gonna get our explorer just going out and scouting the area, and start building our economy up, and get everything into position, get the farms up, all that stuff, all that good stuff. So how's everyone doing today? Today's glorious Friday. Lots of fun and adventure. Dawn over a brand new day. The Aztecs have a special ability called Power of Sacrifice, which allows them to gain resources every time they kill one of our units. But I think we can overcome that pretty easily, and that's really only good early game for rushing. So I'm not too worried about the Aztecs. As long as you play defensively and you don't get overwhelmed by your enemy, you should do okay. But we're gonna pick decent positions for our cities, and we're gonna build defensive fortifications as we go. Aztec civilization is pretty interesting. I read up a bit about their mythology, and the world is divided into kind of like oh, there goes our explorer. There's a city over there that we can exploit later. So the world is divided into kind of like 5 ages. First age is the creation age, and the Aztecs have like a kind of like a dualistic creator, supreme being of the universe. Don't ask me what the name is, I don't remember. I can't pronounce the Aztec names at all. I should ask my friend is actually from Mexico. He would be able to actually answer that. But yeah, so this creator deity, from everything emerges from this creator being, and the universe goes through 5 progressive stages, where a new thing is created in every stage, or the gods have to overcome a kind of challenge, or their own personal jealousy and rivalry. And the biggest rivalry is between Quetzalcoatl, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, but the feathered serpent deity, and the deity called the Hurricane. That's the translation of his name. I don't... This isn't Shane Helms or the guy from WWE. This is Mesoamerican deity. That's, I guess, in charge of weather and hurricanes and the wind in general. So yeah, they go through their rivalries, and I think Quetzalcoatl acts as the sun during one age, and then his brother, or the hurricane, acts as the sun during another age, and the gods can't decide on who gets the power of the sun. And at some point, I think it's in the fourth age, when they're recreating humans, and it's kind of interesting. There's multiple attempts from, I think, the second to the fourth age to get humans right, to not necessarily humans, but a civilization that gives praise to the deities and gives them sacrifice and worship. So they keep screwing up in every age, either due to jealousy or friction between them. At one point, they had giants, and at another point, they had these creatures that ended up becoming monkeys. They get flung into trees, and I guess that's kind of the explanation for why we have monkeys. And then there's also creation of the universe itself. I think is like the universe is like water, and there's like a beast living in the water, and the Mesoamerican gods have to kind of subdue this beast or destroy it in order to create the surface of the earth. And I'm not sure entirely what the reason for this belief is, but I think it has to do with when I was reading it, I was thinking of like earthquakes and volcanoes and natural disasters, and it kind of makes sense that they would kind of think of this as like a raging beast. Like if you heard like an earthquake, you could think of it like a beast's like belly rumbling, or a volcano is kind of like the growl or the war cry of a beast that's angry. Like this all makes sense. I don't know if that's the reason they came up with the mythology. That's just like a thing I was thinking about while I was reading. So, I think it's the fourth age, at the end of the fourth age, or the start of the fifth age. I think it's in the fourth age. They decide on Quetzalcoatl's sun being our sun. The one that glows in the sky. It's not necessarily that they decide this. It's the son of the hurricane is the one that they want to originally choose to be the sun, but he's too afraid to go ahead and sacrifice himself in order to do that. So Quetzalcoatl's son being I don't know what this has to do with it, but like they say that he's like ugly, and I guess he's kind of like an invalid. So they want to sacrifice him. We're getting raided so hard. Let's get all our units safe. I think we'll be okay though. We have large cities which are going to be kind of hard for them to raid early on. But they are doing a lot of damage, and they do get a lot of resources for everything that they destroy. Maybe I shouldn't have sent my light cavalry in advance, but you have a good amount of units here. Yikes. We lost our caravan. That's okay though. That's okay. So we'll keep building forward. We don't want to give them any serious advantage, so we'll just move our industry forward and start building up while we're repelling this invasion. So the son of Quetzalcoatl decides that he's going to become, our son, and he sacrifices himself, but then he becomes arrogant, and he demands sacrifice from the gods in order to in order to move. The gods get frustrated with Quetzalcoatl's son because they don't really know why he's not moving in the sky, but then they realize, you know, they have to offer him sacrifice. So all the gods offer themselves as a sacrifice in order to power the sun. And then for them to replenish their power, I think, is the reason why the Aztecs make ritual human sacrifice. So that was interesting. I had kind of an idea of this, but I didn't understand like the mythological reason behind it. But it really is like they have this deity that refuses to move without sacrifice from the gods, and then the gods need to be powered by something. So the gods need blood sacrifice in order to regain their own energy. And it's interesting how they treat ritual sacrifice too, because there's a layer in heaven. I think heaven is like divided into 7 parts. And in this layer, people that are ritually sacrificed like live in a paradise of their own. A lot of the suffering have like their special paradise if they did something in life that was related to ceremony or combats, things like this. There were ways to get into heaven by committing to some sort of like severe sacrifice in life. There are some kind of strange things too. There's this goddess, I'm not sure, is it Sichel or is it... I think it's Ixtel. It's like the goddess of suicide. So when you commit suicide, apparently this goddess lifts you into heaven, and she's like just hung on a rope. And she kind of looks like just a skeleton hung on a rope, I think. Some interesting beliefs in the Aztec religion. What else can I think of? There's a mythological story about 2 brothers who end up going to the underworld to play a game, some sort of native game involving like a ball, and they upset the Lords of the Dead by playing it over their realm. So they get summoned down to the underworld, and they end up getting killed. But they reincarnate through these kind of seeds, like their heads are planted into this like tree. Let's repel this invasion. I think we're mostly okay at this point. Yeah, so they make this, they're reincarnated as 2 other, they're not really reincarnated. They produce these seeds, and a princess from the underworld takes these seeds from the tree. Even though she's forbidden to do so, she gets curious and she takes the seeds from the tree. And they're reborn as as the incarnation of the 2 brothers that went down to the underworld to play that game. And the kind of princess or queen of the underworld decides to leave, go live in the mountains. She uses there's these kinds of underworld birds, like these talking underworld birds. I'm not sure if they're ravens or crows or something like that. She works with them in order to escape, and she goes to the house of the 2 brothers, where the mother lives with other family members. But these reincarnations are not accepted into the family. So this queen or princess of the underworld is forced to live in the mountains and raise the 2 kids. And then once they grow old enough, they're able to return to their home and live peacefully. But they have to trick some... There's a weird thing where they trick like some family members into coming to the mountains with them, and the family members become monkeys. they're kind of punished for the way that they treat the two relatives. And then, in order to stay in the house, they have to Mother has to promise not to laugh at them, but she keeps laughing because she can't help it. Like, she sees the kids have been turned into monkeys. She sees like her relatives have become monkeys or something like that. So yeah, this happens, and after that, they're living peacefully in the house until they find the old ball that the original brothers had been playing with. And they start playing the same game that got the original brothers into trouble. And of course the Lords of the Dead in the underworld summon them to go have a conversation with them. You know, actually really just to kill them. And they go. And they do really well, actually. They succeed in beating the Lords of the Dead, but they still get killed in the end. They actually managed to beat the 5 houses of the dead. One of them is the house that's like a hothouse that's always on fire. There's a house of darkness with some sort of saw blades that spin back and forth. There's a house of jaguars. And then that house, one of the reincarnated brothers has his head taken off by a jaguar. And they replace his head with like a squash. So that's pretty interesting. They trick the Lords of the Dead by using a squash head for the reincarnated brother. So after that, they end up beating the Lords of the Dead, but they still end up getting killed. So after this happens, they're reincarnated once again as these smaller types of creatures that are immortal, which fascinates the Lord of the Dead, and they bring them into their house for entertainment, into their palace. And they play these kinds of games and tricks to show that they're immortal, and that interests the Lords of the Dead. So they kind of get coaxed into letting these reincarnated creatures behead them because they promise to bring them back to life. And they just, the 2 reincarnated creatures just slaughter all the Lords of the Dead. And I think the blood from the sacrifice is used to grow wheat above the surface or something like that. It's an interesting story about, I think, harvest. Like, it's kind of like a story about the origin of the harvest, because those two original brothers were supposed to be gods of the harvest. So anyway, that was an interesting story. What else can I think of? Let's take down this fortress here. I'm gonna start pressing on the attack because we have decent enough resources. There's a story about... it reminded me of, if anyone's read The Republic, there's a concept in that book about just person with a reputation for justice. Sorry, the unjust person with a reputation for justice versus a just person with a reputation of injustice. There's like this noble woman who completely destroys the attempts to destroy the reputation of this girl that she's jealous of, and says all these terrible things about her and how bad she is. And I think eventually she ends up she commits suicide, and her tomb smells like flowery and like all pretty and nice. So it kind of reflects badly on this noble woman because of all the terrible things that she said. The gods don't seem to agree with her. And then when she dies, she becomes like, her tomb is like foul, and she kind of becomes a spectral spirit that starts haunting people. That was an interesting story too, but I don't remember the name of that one. Let me try to look it up. Have it online. I can't pronounce the name, but it's a tale of XTABAY. It's about, I think, one of the lost kingdoms of the Mayhab fell. People moved to smaller villages. Families became diverse, and their social roles changed. So this girl that was just kind of like, I don't want to say a poor person, but she was part of the underclass. She was committing to roles that she shouldn't have in conventional society, and that's the reason that this upper class kind of Mayan princess. Sorry, not Mayan. Is it Mayan? Oh, jeez. XTABAY. It's a hunter's daughter. It's a free spirit. Blah blah blah. She's like kind and generous and gave way to people that needed it. I think she might have been a prostitute too, because there's a line here about how she learned from the priestesses that her body could be a tool of worship and fellowship. She was kind of like a simple and humble person, but she was despised. She was despised by a girl that doesn't really have a name, but was given the name Utzkolel. It's Kolel. Not sure what she's named. So Utzkolel was turning the whole village against this one girl who was just like the most innocent, kindest, nicest person ever, and just treating her really badly, to the point where she eventually, I guess, caved in and was, let me make sure, how does she end up dying? So she spent her time in the wilds, just around plants and earth, things that didn't judge her. she spent a lot of nights alone. And then the villagers that were loyal to her, or that were her friends, noticed one day that she was absent in the community, so they went to go see what happened to her. And flowers began spreading throughout the village. And they looked for the source of the flowers, and it was this girl, this like kind, noble girl, who was dead. And then her nemesis, this like cold-hearted lady, said that it was impossible for her to smell so sweet because she was marred by sin, and claimed that she was a vile spirit rejected by the underworld. So yeah. That's entertaining. So, she was really jealous about the miraculous death of this girl that she bullied and harassed and tortured, in a sense causing her to end up in this kind of position of demise. So she worked on being she withdrew from the world and dedicated herself to being virtuous after this. But it was for all the wrong reasons. Like, her heart was just filled with hatred, and her cold beauty was wasted to nothing, as it says here. One day her mother found her dead, sprawled on the floor, and there was I think a putrid scent. Hang on. So, people spoke very well about her and called her exemplary, blah blah blah. But during the night, a rotten stench began to float along the limestone streets. And it was from the corpse of this lady. Odorless blood petals nestled amid the thorns now curdled in the air like putrid human flesh. I love this. So it's kind of like a warning for people that pretend to be virtuous and pious, when in reality they're just horrible, nasty people. That just like to spread rumors and lies, and they're just jealous of others. So that kind of resonated with me. I think the Aztecs also, are they the civilization that had floating gardens, or is that just like a Civilization 5 thing? It must have been a real thing that happened. I'm gonna look for it. Floating gardens. Oh yeah. It's looking nice. Oh, that's so cool. It's like gardens just floating around the water, probably around channels and waterways where the Aztecs flourished as a society. Do more research on these things, they look awesome. I'm assuming since they already have these gardens, they probably just did a bit about hydroponic gardening too, but I can't prove that. Yeah, but they're beautiful. Yeah, go check out Aztec floating gardens, they look so nice. Aztecs had a relatively decent culture. They were kind of, in a sense, they were kind of like the Greeks. You know, sans like blood sacrifices, but in terms of like their social structure, they were a combination of like they were an alliance of 3 city-states in the Yucatan region that joined together and kind of subdued the other surrounding villages and tribes. And then they used economic coercion to make themselves the sole economic supplier of a lot of resources, forcing surrounding nations to be dependent on them for economic purposes. And by doing this, they were able to secure themselves as the dominant power in the region. Before the Spanish arrived, they had a pretty thriving empire. Then once the Spanish arrived, of course, we all know the story. We're the product of that story. Some of us more than others, but yeah. There would be no America if the Spanish didn't arrive here and discover it, so... Sorry, what am I saying? That America would there'd be no modern states. Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Mexico would still exist, but it wouldn't be the way it is today. Of course, the United States wouldn't exist without Columbus discovering America. The Americas. What are we doing? Sending our forces forward like this. So we're gonna try to bait our enemy here. And we're gonna continue to press the attack. Before we arrived, the Aztecs had no knowledge of freedom. They didn't know what freedom was. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. I introduced freedom to the Aztecs. What else do I know about the Aztecs? Their main city was situated on kind of islands with a canal surrounding it, and the only way to get through was these two land bridges. Otherwise you'd have to invade by like canoes. So it was pretty well defended and secured. And I think Cortez actually failed his first, his initial invasion. No, wait. Cortez, I think, was invited into the city the first time because they thought that he was Quetzalcoatl for whatever reason. Just like the legends, the way that they described the gods fell in line with, I guess, the appearance of the Spanish at the time. The Spanish were able to take advantage of the mythology originally, but once the Aztecs wised up, they really cracked down. I think they were able to retake the city. The real failure of the Aztecs was just pissing off all their neighbors. You know, their surrounding neighbors didn't despise their empire, they probably would have been able to repel the Spanish. But because the Spanish had support from all their rivals, they were able to take the city pretty quickly. With access to gunpowder and horses and all these other advances that the Aztecs didn't have access to. Horses especially, because Aztecs didn't have South America actually did originally at some point have horses. I'm not sure when they died out, but by the time that the Spanish arrived, they were already gone. They had gone extinct. So yeah, let's continue to spread Manifest Destiny to the Aztecs. The city is lit. Its barracks is lit. Let's consolidate our forces and push forward. raid the area and take as many villagers as possible. We just want to disrupt their economy at this point, so they have no way at all of recovering. And once this city gets assimilated, we'll start attacking their other cities. As long as we still have the timer ticking as well. So, we still have Texcoco. I'm butchering these names so bad. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to pronounce any of these names. It's Quetzalcoatl, and it's probably not even remotely close to how do you pronounce it. I'd recommend, I mean, if you're interested in mythology at all, and mythology related to the Aztecs, you have access to Libby. I don't know if Libby's like a strictly Canadian thing, but it's like an app you can get on your smartphone. There's a book called Heart of, oh man, what is, hang on. I'm trying to reference things I don't even know the names of. Feathered Serpent's Dark Heart of the Sky. It's a pretty good book on Aztec Mayan mythology. Alright, so we beat the Aztecs 34-41. Got their Oath of Fealty. We successfully spread democracy to the Aztecs. Praise be. Let's take a look around the world. The British we have to take care of still. The Mayans look like they're in a really bad position right now. Pincered in by us and the Spanish, who are launching invasions from... They went down to West Africa into South America. Still pushing forward. So we have to think about what our next step is. Me personally, I'm not sure if it's worth attacking the Maya right now. But we still have to unite North America somehow. And we need the Yucatan for that. I think I'm gonna work around a different strategy. But I need some time to really think about what I'm gonna do here, so until then, I think this is gonna be me signing off. And next time we'll see what we do. So this has been the Americans with Tulsi Gabbard. I'll see you guys next time, and take care and have